I'm Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And those of you who have been watching the show know that for years there are a lot of unsolved cases that we've been covering. Some of them have gone cold. So when one of those cases suddenly has a development and starts to heat up, it's big news. It's big news for us, but even bigger news for the family and for the victims in those cases. Tonight we're going to be talking about a woman named Crystal Rogers. To start, this is a mom who had 5 children, only 35 years old. I want that to set in for just a second, because when we talk about things, terrible things that happen to nice people, the impact of that is deep, extremely deep. In this case now, think about this. This is Crystal Rogers. She disappeared in 2015 on July 4th weekend. 5 young children who've been growing up without a mom. Their lives forever changed, and not for the better. Not even, I mean, you know, you got to work through that stuff. But growing up without a mom? Growing up without a mother? So July 3rd, July 4th, she is last seen at the home of a boyfriend and then is never seen again. And it's desperation almost from the beginning in this story and in this case and in this mystery. Her parents, obviously heartbroken. Her dad, heartbroken. My daughter is missing. My daughter's missing. And what does he do for the next 16 months? For the next 16 months, every day, day in and day out, he's looking for her. Trying to find Crystal. Trying to find his little girl. I don't care if she's 35. That's his little girl. And he continues every day and does not stop until someone puts a bullet in his chest. So Tommy Ballard, who's looking for his daughter Crystal, who's vanished, is then murdered. It takes a family tragedy and exponentially multiplies it. And this isn't a small town. We're talking about a small town, Bardstown, Kentucky. Come on, a missing person and a murder? So a lot of people think these two would obviously be in some way, somehow connected. But for 8 years, no one's been arrested. Case hasn't been solved. Brooks Houck is the boyfriend of Crystal, the father of her youngest child. Of those 5 we were talking about, the youngest is his child as well. He's been a suspect for years. 4 years. There's been like a microscope on him. He's been interviewed, he's been interrogated, he's been watched. There have been searches on his property, his family's property that he developed because he's in the construction business. We don't know the results of those searches, but some of them have been pretty recent. And again, 8 years, a suspect, but not arrested for this. Now the big break in the case. This man, Joseph Lawson, has been arrested and charged. Conspiracy to commit murder. Conspiracy. Magical words in the law, conspiracy. One person cannot conspire. It takes more than one. So as we get this break in this case, an arrest, charges, it's not over. It's just beginning. Scripps News Lexington, our great affiliate, has more for us tonight.
It's hard because I feel like nothing's happening right now, and I can't handle that, thinking nothing's happening.
Crystal Rogers' mother, Sherry Ballard, chose not to speak with us today. But if past interviews are any indication, the news of an arrest is a long time coming. 32-year-old Joseph Lawson of Nelson County was arrested by the FBI in connection with the death of Crystal Rogers. When the FBI took over the case 3 years ago, Ballard prayed for this outcome.
See them come in. I have begged for this. I've made it my mission in life to get more help for Crystal's case. So to see it actually happening was very overwhelming. It was a very hard weekend for me.
Crystal was reported missing on July 5th, 2015. That's just a day or days after Lawson is accused of his involvement in the case. He's charged with criminal conspiracy to commit murder and tampering with physical evidence. The indictment states that on July 3rd and or 4th of 2015, Lawson committed conspiracy to commit murder when he agreed to aid one or more persons in the planning of the crime or attempt to commit the crime, and when he and a co-conspirator intentionally caused the death of another. This is the first arrest made in the case since Crystal's disappearance. Crystal's then-boyfriend, Brooks Houck, has remained the main suspect, but he's never been charged. Crystal was last seen at Houck's home, leading some to question if and how Lawson and Houck are linked in the Crystal Rogers case.
I guess as a mom, in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, gosh, could she still be there? Could she still be there? I guess until I find her, I'm just never going to be happy with that farm. I always think that's the last place she was seen. Could she be there and maybe it was overlooked or something? We've searched in the woods numerous times, and we have walked through something and come back by and seen something that we totally missed.
So this man, Joseph Lawson, in court being arraigned. Let's take a look.
The indictment says on July 3rd, 2015 and or July 4th, 2015 in Nelson County, Kentucky, that you committed the offense of criminal conspiracy to commit murder when, with the intention of promoting or facilitating the crime, you agreed to aid one or more persons in the planning or commission of the crime or an attempt or solicitation to commit the crime when you and or a co-conspirator intentionally caused the death of another. As charged, that's a Class B felony where you're facing 10 to 20 years in prison. So do you understand what you're charged with in that indictment?
Kind of, but yes, sir.
Kind of. Let me tell you, this may be the key to peeling back all the layers as to what happened to Crystal Rogers. Let's bring in our guest joining us tonight from Lexington, Kentucky, anchor at Scripps News Lexington, Nancy Cox, back with us. Nancy, great to see you. Thank you so much. Let's start by putting some perspective on this, right? You guys are on the ground. You've been covering this story for years. How big is this development?
Huge is not a big enough word for this development. There have only been 2 cases in my 31 years of covering the news in Kentucky, 2 cases that I said would never be solved. One was Crystal Rogers. I never believed there would be an arrest in this when one didn't come in the first 5 years or so, because it was pretty clear to everyone who the suspect was, and the fact that they had search after search after search and had nothing to report, no evidence. I was not optimistic at all. So this is huge for finally an arrest to come down. And as you've said, the conspiracy charge that's with it, we know this is just the first domino to fall.
So what has the reaction been from whether it's family, law enforcement, Brooks Houck, whoever? What have you been seeing and hearing out there?
The first thing is shock. People like me didn't think this would ever lead to an arrest, and now here we have one. And as I said, clear indication it's just the first arrest to come. So shock was the first thing. But now everyone just wants to know, why? How? What does he know? What evidence do they have? Are they simply putting a lot of pressure on one or more people to flip and to give greater evidence against the main suspect? We don't know. Everyone is so anxious to hear. And I can only imagine being in Sherry Ballard's shoes right now. Hopefully she is being briefed on all of this, but we know they can't tell anyone everything. So there's just a huge desire right now for information. How did we get to this arrest?
What do we know about Joseph Lawson, his background, his, who this guy is?
We don't know a lot, except that he's been in and out of trouble for much of his young life. The name Lawson came up in one of the very first interviews police did with Brooks Houck, but it wasn't Joseph Lawson, it was Steve Lawson. What happened was they were interrogating Brooks about a phone call he made very late the night Crystal disappeared. They showed him the number. He called it up and he goes, "Oh, this was Steve Lawson." Who's Steve Lawson? Well, he works for me. That's basically all that's been released. This is the interview right here you're looking at. He asked him, "Why did you call me late that night? I can't seem to recall." And there was a little back and forth about, "Oh, don't you remember? There were some rental properties I had a question about, and you told me you'd have to call Crystal about that." Well, that sent up a red flag because he was supposedly at that moment when he took that phone call sitting beside Crystal in his truck. So why would he need to call Crystal? He talked around that a little bit as well, saying, "Oh, well, I knew she wouldn't want to bother with this late at night, so I acted like she wasn't with me." So just some inconsistencies, some red flags went up there. We've looked into the name Stephen Lawson, and we can tell you he does have a son, Joseph. We don't have that birthday to compare, but one could assume that Joseph Lawson would be the son of the Stephen Lawson who Brooks Houck said worked for him. And by the way, Joseph Lawson was just 25 years old when Crystal disappeared.
So we've got between Brooks Houck, who's been this suspect all along, and the man arrested, just one degree of separation, which would be the man who works for Brooks is the father of Joseph. That is fascinating. Okay, are prosecutors, investigators saying anything now?
Nothing. They've been extremely tight-lipped from day one, especially when the FBI took over the case. So no, they aren't sharing anything with the media. Just, this is the date the crime happened that we're charging him in connection with. And that was, of course, the July 4th weekend in 2015 when Crystal disappeared. Joseph Lawson's attorney has confirmed these charges are related to Crystal, but the FBI won't even come out and say, yes, that's correct. So they're not telling us anything. One would guess they're trying to put the most amount of pressure they can on Joseph Lawson and anyone else they're talking to or potentially charging in this case.
And what's next? They
need them. Yeah. They need them to talk. Well, it's clear if in 8 years they haven't charged Brooks Houck, they clearly need Joseph Lawson to talk. They need his testimony. They need others who might be involved in this. They need their testimony because clearly there's just not enough evidence to arrest Brooks Houck at this point.
All right, Nancy Cox, anchor at Scripps News Lexington. Thank you so much. Great reporting always coming from you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, as you heard Nancy talk about this interview with Brooks Houck, remember, this is the boyfriend. The father of her youngest child is being interviewed. I want you to watch this interview. This is July 8th, 2015. So this is just a few days after she's gone missing. And the last time she's seen is with Brooks Houck on the family farm that the Houck family owns. So let's take a listen as they talk about this late night phone call to Steve Lawson.
Okay, who is Steve Lawson? He's somebody that works for me.
I just want to tell you I'm sorry about everything that's going on in your life, brother, and I got you in my prayers.
I said it is a very difficult and trying time, but I appreciate you you saying that. But hey, I need your help while I got you on the phone here. Do you remember the other night you called me really late, and I forgot what you asked me. Can you I guess we wasn't on the phone. I might have been tired. I know it was pretty late at night. Can you remember what you asked me or what you were after? I can't remember.
Yes, sir, I can. I called to ask you for them numbers for her house.
Oh, for a rental house.
Yes, sir, I
And
did.
what did I forgot? What did I tell you?
You told me that you would call, what's her name, Katie or whatever, she handles all that.
Crystal.
Crystal, okay, I apologize.
Yeah.
And you said she handles all that, and that you would get back with me on it.
All right. Thank you so much, Neil.
Hey, if there's anything I can do, you give me a call.
Thank you. You have a good night now.
Yes, sir. God bless you.
Okay. So that begs a question in my mind.
All right.
If she's in the truck next to you when he called, why would you need to call her about getting numbers for rental
Because
property?
being that way that night we're headed to the house, you know, I just wouldn't, she normally's not going to deal with stuff that late. And I mean, I don't even, I probably didn't even look at the phone to see who it was calling me. I'm sure I just answered it, you know.
But he said you told him that you'd need to call her.
All right.
Why would you need to call her? I mean, that's an odd phrase for someone who's sitting next to you in the truck. Do you understand? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see exactly what you're saying. But I mean, that's what if that right there is what I told him, that right there is what I told him. We wasn't on the phone that long, but normally I would just, she handles all that, and that's what I would do. She's not going to want to mess with that kind of stuff that late. I'm sure I'll probably try to answer the phone really quickly, so that it wouldn't, a lot of times after I get moving, goes to sleep, you know. Sometimes he goes to sleep in the truck, sometimes he doesn't. So if you want to call him, you got his number and everything. If you want to call him, you know, you can call him.
Interesting the way he talks around all of that. Going to bring back in our body language experts later this week to take another look at that in light of the information we're getting now and how significant it is. All right, let's dive a little deeper into all this. Joining us from Cincinnati, Ohio, investigative journalist, producer, and co-host of the Investigators podcast that is focused on the Crystal Rogers case, and a friend of mine, former co-worker, Jessica Knoll. Jessica, great to see you.
Hi, Vinny. Great to see you too.
Okay, so this is a major development in this case. I mean, they've been looking at Brooks Houck all these years, nothing. Now they've got 1 degree of separation. What are your thoughts tonight?
You know, I've been using the exact same analogy that she used a second ago was dominoes. This is just the first. And I gotta believe that this is not only just the first, but it's gonna be huge. It's gonna blow up. And I think we're gonna see, my guess would be at least 3 more arrests.
3 more? What are you hearing? Or can you not reveal what you're hearing? Because I've got, okay, Brooks Houck, potentially, right, if he's connected to this. The connection between Brooks and the man who's arrested could be Steve Lawson, potentially. He hasn't been arrested, but that's a potential. What else is out there?
Well, we covered these extensively on the Bardstown podcast in 2019. We covered all 5 of the unsolved cases within Bardstown, and Crystal and Tommy were, you know, big ones of those. And in doing so, what we uncovered in that was Brooks' brother, Nick Houck, was at the time a Bardstown police officer when she went missing. And he actually ended up getting fired in part for getting involved in the case. He actually called during one of those interrogation videos, he actually calls Brooks and essentially tells him to keep his mouth shut, playing his attorney, if you will, and telling him not to say anything else. So for doing that and getting involved in the investigation and potentially messing up anything, the Chief McCubbin fired him. Also, an interesting fact in all that was that he never went to look for Crystal. This is his brother's girlfriend, his nephew's mother, and that was something that really stuck with Chief Rick McCubbin at the time, who was the Bardstown.
This is a small town, right? This is a super small town. You're talking about 5 unsolved cases? Are any of these other ones potentially connected to this?
Well, I mean, you have the obvious because it is a small town. So a lot of them have connections in that way. But Jason Ellis is the first one. And I've been covering his case since 2013 when it happened. He was a Bardstown police officer with Nick Houck. Then you have Tommy Ballard, who is Crystal's father, who just over a year after she disappeared is shot and killed in what is first believed to be a hunting accident when he's hunting on his own property with his grandson. And you've got to remember, Tommy Ballard was very vocal during those 18 months while his daughter was missing, very vocal about her disappearance, the case, and who he believed was responsible for it. So now the FBI is not only investigating Crystal's case, they're also investigating Tommy's case. So is there a connection between these cases? I believe there is. And I think once more arrests are made, we're going to start seeing more solved cases here.
All right, we're going to dig into this story, into this case, into some of the evidence. Jessica Knoll will be staying with us. We'll also bring in some more of our investigators. A lot to get to, plus coming up next hour. In Los Angeles, California, some unexpected developments in the case of convicted rapist Danny Masterson, former star of That 70s Show, as his friends and former co-stars Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis post an explanation about their letters to the judge in support of Masterson. We have the video, plus the response of Masterson's accuser.
My name is Ashton Kutcher. I'm an actor, investor, philanthropist, and most importantly, a father. I met Danny Masterson when I was 20 years old in 1998. He instantly became a friend, dedicated coworker, and role model to me, and has remained as such for 25 years.
I've worked hard all my life. I've gone from being a local reporter to becoming a law student to then even going on to teach other lawyers, all before I came to Court TV. As a journalist, lawyer, and teacher, I learned the secret to success is speaking in your authentic voice. And I bring that lesson to my show, Opening Statements, every morning on Court TV.
Opening Statements with Julie Grant. Weekday mornings at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
Is Sherry the one that reported her missing? Mm-hmm. Sherry's. All right, I had a question from the media or from the news that I wanted to ask you all think about. You all said that a family member found her car. How does that happen? Rather than the police department, as large as this county is, a family member.
Well, that's a pretty big family, and as I understand it, someone who knew them called them and said there's a car that looks like hers on the parkway, and they went out there.
Who was the family member that found that car?
I don't know, I have to look at my notes. There were two of them.
Am I able to know that question, that answer?
I'll tell you who it was. I just have to look back through my notes and see who it was.
That's a strange moment, isn't it? There's Brooks Houck being questioned by police, and he's questioning the police about, oh, who found the car, and why is it the family member found it? I mean, I've seen it in more than one case where the family is desperate to get any information, and their friends will be desperate to get any information. Was he desperate? Was he out there looking for her? I don't know. Still with us, investigative journalist, producer, and co-host of the Investigators podcast, Jessica Knoll. Also joining us now in Jacksonville, Alabama, forensic death investigator, professor of forensics at Jacksonville State University, and host of the Body Bags podcast, Joseph Scott Morgan. And joining us in Los Angeles, California tonight, retired FBI Special Agent Bobby Chacon. Welcome, everyone. I just want to take a moment and just acknowledge Bobby. I know it's 9/11. I know it's such a significant day for you, being one of the folks who responded to all of that in New York. So thank you for the work that you've done, and I appreciate you being on here tonight, on a night where I know it's tough to do anything but think about all that you experienced and the losses, et cetera. So thanks so much, Bobby.
Thank you, Vin.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate that.
We
very
really
much.
do.
It's a special day for me, yes.
Okay. Let's start here. Bobby, I'll start with you. What we just saw there, Brooks Houck, who's been the suspect since the beginning, that was an awkward moment, wasn't it? Kind of a strange moment.
Totally, and he's trying to find out what the police know, right? He's trying to find out more about the investigation. We've seen this time and again when someone's involved in a crime, right? They're desperate to know what the police know, who reported it, you know, what they say. You know, it's not, he doesn't want to know about the disappearance. He wants to know about the investigation, you know, and that's really peculiar. To me, it's a dead giveaway. There's a couple of things. You know, you played a segment of that interview earlier where, you know, that crazy phone call with the guy who called him at night, and he doesn't remember what the guy asked him. It didn't surprise me he didn't remember, but then he says, "What did I tell you?" Now, normally, if you call me and say, "Oh, that's right, that's what you called me about," I'll remember what I said back to you. But he asked the guy to repeat what he said back to the guy. So that's a dead giveaway that he's trying to use this guy as some kind of alibi for himself. Not the fact that he didn't remember what the guy asked him, but once reminded of what the guy asked him, he certainly should have remembered what he then responded to the guy. So there's a couple of problematic things in this interview that jump out to me.
And you know, Joseph Scott Morgan, I'm going to play some more of this, and as you watch it, and everybody at home, Brooks Houck reminds me of like one of those reality show people. You know, like you're ad-libbing, you're kind of, you know, no script per se, but you're just like a really bad actor, okay? That's the way it's coming across to me. That's just my interpretation. Here he is in that moment that Jessica talked about, where his brother, the police officer, is on the phone with him in the middle of this interrogation.
We're still getting video from different places, you know, that along that route. Can I get this? Sure. You come over? No. I'm up here. I know that you didn't know. I'm up here in this interview with the Detective Snow. I've been up here a good little while. I'm filling out this statement here and everything. Are you telling me that's what I need to do? I know that. But the way that I look at it is I'm innocent. I ain't done nothing wrong. Well, you know, I know you told me innocent people have got jammed up, but if you're telling me to leave, I'll get up and leave. If you want me to. I know I'm going through a lot, but I'm trying to get this guy to help me. I don't think she's ran off with some other guy. I don't believe that. You can't make me think that. No. Yeah, so do I. I'll do exactly what you're telling me to do right now. You want me to get up and leave? Man, I don't think these guys. I don't think these people are rather vindictive just to skin me for no reason. Man, this is not their family. This is not. All right, thank you. He thinks y'all little. He thinks. I don't know who he is.
Nick, my brother. He just, no, I know that, but I'm not. He just said just to keep sitting up here. He said give a statement, do an interview, whatever I got to do it. But he said, darn, just to keep letting them just beat you to death over this right here. Just ask what you got to ask and let you know.
And you tell me.
You see what I mean, he knows more about this than I do.
What is this? What is this, Joseph Scott? What did we just see there? Joseph? Oh, wow. Oh, he's unfrozen now.
Oh, okay.
Joseph Scott Morgan, you were frozen there for a second. Sorry. I thought you were mad at me. No, go ahead.
No way. Yeah, major deflection, I think, on his part. It's fascinating, isn't it? it's almost like he's had this conversation. I love how you use this term, get jammed up, relative to an interaction with police. And, you know, I'm sure that just if his brother's a police officer, I'm sure that they've, in passing, had conversations about what it's like to go through an interview, perhaps interrogation. He understands that. But also there was a touch of Bard in there as well. It seemed as though there was a bit of acting, attempt acting. He wants to at least give the appearance that, you know, he's an open book and that he's not going to cause problems. As a matter of fact, he wants to help find us. And he doesn't think that she's, quote unquote, run off with another guy. And so all of this is being played to the benefit of the detective that's sitting trying to do his job. Trust that detective is assessing everything that's coming out of his mouth, watching his movements, and he's making note of it.
You know, these guys, yeah, they want me to go to a commercial, but I'm not going to go to a commercial. I'm going to keep doing this segment because that's what, okay. Sorry. I mean, it was crazy what we just saw. So let's take a look at this. August 20th, 2020, the FBI takes over the case. Search warrants executed on Brooks' house, his brother's house, the Houck family farm. August 27th, 2021, multi-day search. Federal agents find items of interest under a driveway in the Woodlawn Springs subdivision. October 21st, 2022, FBI agents conclude a second search of the Houck family farm. Jessica Knoll, do we know items of interest? Do we have any idea?
No, we don't. And what we do know is that they did collect evidence and that it was then sent to the FBI lab in Quantico. That's about all we know. And since it has been some time and now there has been an arrest, we may know a little more than we did before soon.
Bobby, do you think there's a connection here between these subsequent searches by the FBI and what has happened now with this arrest?
Well, yeah, I absolutely do, because one of the charges is tampering with evidence. So, you know, it's some kind of evidence-related charge. The second charge that he's charged with, the first one is conspiracy to commit the murder or to, you know, assist in committing the murder, and the second one is an evidence charge, is tampering with evidence. So I think it definitely, some of those searches, some of that stuff was probably, you know, run through some databases, whether they got DNA. This guy that was arrested, I think, has a fairly active criminal history. So his DNA, his fingerprints and stuff were probably on file. And so I definitely think there's a relationship between the searches, the results of the searches sent to the lab, what the lab was able to glean from that evidence and these charges.
What a great point, right? He's like a career criminal. His DNA and stuff's going to be in the system. All right, guests are staying where they are. When we come back, we're going to talk about the shooting death of Crystal's father, Tommy Ballard.
On Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020, Sydney killed her best friend, her mother.
The shock remains in this Wallhaven neighborhood of Akron.
Why? Why did that happen?
An Ohio woman pleads insanity in the stabbing death of her mother.
This is not a case about who did it. These lies were built and controlled by Miss Powell.
The voices are getting louder.
This is going to be quite a case.
The mother stabbed murder trial. Coverage continues Wednesday at 8/7 Central on Court TV.
The person that did this to my daughter knew my husband was not stopping, and he would not have given up until my daughter was brought home.
Incredible heartbreak for Sherry Ballard. Her daughter's missing, and then her husband, who's been every day, day in and day out looking for her, is shot and killed and is murdered. All this taking place in a small town, Bardstown, Kentucky. Unbelievable. Let's take a look at the timeline. So you've got July 3rd, 2015. Crystal Rogers last seen in her boyfriend's house, Brooks Houck. July 5th, Crystal Rogers reported missing. Her car is found abandoned with a flat tire at mile maker 14 on the Bluegrass Parkway in Bardstown. Her keys, phone, and purse all inside the car. July 8th, Brooks Houck is interviewed by detectives. October 16th, Brooks' brother Nick is fired from the Bardstown Police Department. And then November 19th, Tommy Ballard, Crystal's dad fatally shot in the chest by an unknown person on family property while taking his grandson hunting. Okay, let's bring back in our guest, Jessica Knoll, investigative journalist, Joseph Scott Morgan, forensic death investigator, Bobby Chacon, former FBI special agent. Joseph Scott Morgan, I don't believe in coincidences. I just don't. I mean, it can't be a coincidence, can it?
No, it's not. And Tommy's death to me is very intriguing, Ben. When you think about the nature of this, he sustained a what I would deem as a center mass shot, which means right in the center of the body, on his property. When he's out with his young grandson, one of the compelling things is that the grandson called his grandmother and said, "Meemaw, Papa's been shot." At that moment in time, and she frantically begins to get dressed and to go out there and attempt to render aid. And that suggests for me in this environment that someone would have to have a familiarity with the location, would have an idea as to, say, for instance, set up a perfect hide and anticipate where to shoot from, maybe an idea of what the point of egress would be for this gentleman to leave the house with his grandson in tow. And here's one more thing I think that's kind of compelling. Was there any kind of foreknowledge, not foreknowledge, that sounds too new agey, but was there any kind of knowledge that was out there that stated that Tommy was going to go hunting that morning? Had it been put out? Had he talked about it to anybody so that there could be this moment of anticipation where someone could have taken this kind of shot? What it sounds like, it's a single shot. And it killed him on the spot right there. So I think that that's very compelling evidence, and I'd really be interested to know about the nature of that gunshot wound, and also if anything at the scene was recovered relative to the spent round. Was it still in his remains, or did it pass through his body?
Bobby Chacon, are we looking for a sharpshooter here?
Yeah, I think so. Well, yes and no. I mean, look, that's an area where a lot of people are hunters, right? So they're very skilled with rifles. So I would assume that a lot of men in that general area, certainly in that town, are good long-range shots. They're hunters. They probably hunt every year. They zero in their weapons every season. They're very conversant in taking long shots and killing deer and the turkey and things like that. So I think that, sharpshooter, yes, but probably a lot of people in that town fit that profile.
All right, Bobby, I know you have to get out, so we appreciate your time tonight. Jessica Knoll, let me go to you right now. What else did you dig up relative to the murder of Tommy Ballard?
Well, this is going to kind of piggyback on another conversation we had about connections. So Tommy Ballard, where he was hunting on his family's property, butted up against the Bluegrass Parkway. And Bluegrass Parkway is also where Crystal Rogers' car was found on the side of the road. Also, Bluegrass Parkway is where the exit was that Jason Ellis was ambushed a few years earlier than that. So there's literally a connecting route for all of these killings and missing persons cases. As far as Tommy's death goes, I don't believe in coincidences either, especially for having done this for as long as I have. And he was leading the charge in the search for his daughter. He had created Team Crystal. He led numerous searches throughout the area, which none, by the way, Brooks ever showed up to help search for his missing girlfriend. So there's too much going on that would make me believe at all that this was an accidental shooting.
Joseph Scott Morgan, we have about 20 seconds left here. I think the key to everything, though, Joseph Lawson now in custody, he's got to roll over. Bottom line.
Yeah, he does. I'd like to know what his association is with any of these construction sites. For me, as a forensic investigator, remember, they recovered evidence out of a driveway, Vin. You have access to concrete, all those sorts of things, being able to pour stuff. Looking for Crystal, I think, is going to be very important. It's going to lead back to some element of construction as far as I'm concerned. I'd like to know what kind of knowledge he has. Has he been a hand out on any of these job sites that this fellow's run?
All right. Big thank you, Joseph Scott Morgan, Jessica Knoll. Check out the podcast. They're amazing. The Investigators and Body Bags. Thank you so much.